There was a time when America's word was final. When Washington spoke, everyone listened. But that time is over. India, the world's biggest democracy and rising power, just showed the world how it's done. And America, they're still trying to figure out what hit them. This isn't about trade deals or angry tweets. This is about the big shift happening right now where old rules don't work anymore. This is how India played the game better and left America looking weak. Look, sanctions used to be the magic bullet. That's what people don't get. It wasn't about being right. It was about control. America had this system where if you stepped out of line, you got punished. Trade with someone we don't like, boom, sanctions. Buy oil from the wrong guy, economic pressure. Go against our wishes, financial pain. For decades, it worked perfectly because America controlled everything. The dollar, the banks, the trade routes, even the news. But here's the thing, that system is broken now. It's like trying to use a typewriter in the iPhone age. The world moved on, but America's playbook didn't. You've got countries now that don't need American permission to survive. Places like India, China, Brazil are building their own systems, their own partnerships, their own ways of doing business. Every time America threatens sanctions, they're actually pushing these countries to find new solutions. India saw this coming. When Washington told India to stop buying Russian oil, India didn't argue. They didn't give speeches. They just said no. Not rudely, not dramatically, just clearly. This helps our people, so we're doing it. That wasn't rebellion. That was smart leadership. The sanctions game is dying because countries have choices now. They're not sitting around waiting for American approval anymore. They're building their own networks. And every time America uses that threat, they lose a bit more power. It's like the boy who cried wolf. Eventually, nobody believes you. India didn't just wake up one day and decide to challenge America. This has been building for years. For decades, India played it quiet. Huge country, massive potential, but geopolitically careful. They'd smile politely, do business, avoid fights. The world expected India to stay in that box forever. Be thankful for investment, follow the rules, don't make waves. But that India is gone. Under Modi's leadership, everything changed. It's not about picking fights or making enemies. It's about dignity. India is done being treated like America's little brother. They're not a branch office of Washington's foreign policy. They're a major power with their own needs, their own plans, their own future to build. You see it everywhere now. India signs military deals with America, then makes energy deals with Russia. They join Western groups, then sit at tables with China. They work with American tech companies while building their own tech at home. They're not picking sides. They're picking what works for India every single time. This kind of independence scares old powers because for so long, world politics was simple. You're either with us or against us. Pick a team and stick with it. But India is saying something new. We're on our own team. They don't need babysitting. They don't need permission. That's scary for empires built on controlling others. And India isn't just talking big. They're backing it up with action, protecting their borders, building roads and factories, growing their economy, spreading their influence. Real power doesn't need to be loud. It just gets things done. And India's getting a lot done these days. When India refused to stop buying Russian oil, it wasn't just about energy. It showed something much bigger. American influence is cracking. Trump's reaction proves it. Trump works on one simple idea. Power means respect. You threaten, people back down. You pressure, people give in. You show strength, the world falls in line. That's the old way, and it worked for generations. America was the only option. If Washington wanted something, countries delivered, not because they loved America, but because they had nowhere else to go. But now they do. And when India kept buying Russian oil despite American anger, it broke that old system wide open. Trump saw this as betrayal. In his mind, friends should follow orders. America puts money in your economy, buys your stuff, gives you access to our markets, and you pay us back by doing what we say. Simple deal. But India didn't play along. They bought Russian oil. Lots of it, even when Western news channels went crazy about sanctions. Why? Because it made sense. It was cheaper, steady, and helped regular Indians. So Trump hit back with tariffs. 25% increases, trade blocks, financial threats. Classic American move, do what we say or get hurt. But here's the problem. It didn't work. India didn't panic or give up. They held their ground. And that's why Trump's really mad. Not because India said no, but because American threats don't scare big countries anymore. This is the new world. The weapons that gave America total control are getting weaker. Tariffs, sanctions, military shows, money pressure, these tools are losing their bite, especially against countries like India that are strong economically, confident politically, and no longer need American approval to survive. Trump's anger shows a bigger truth. The one superpower world is dead. The days of one country telling everyone else what to do are over, and leaders who still think in us versus them terms can't handle what's coming next. Energy runs everything. That's the real bottom line. You don't power a country on good intentions or nice speeches. You power it on fuel. India gets this better than most people in Washington. India's energy deals with Russia aren't some anti-American move. It's smart business based on what India needs. You've got 1.4 billion people in India, one of the fastest growing economies anywhere. Huge energy needs for factories, roads, power, everything. If you want to help millions of people live better lives, you need energy that's cheap, reliable, and secure. Russia, blocked from Western markets, was offering exactly that. Big discounts, sometimes 30% below normal prices. While Europe was struggling to find expensive energy, dealing with shortages and high prices, India locked in cheap oil deals, quietly, smoothly, no fuss. That's not choosing Russia over America. That's choosing Indian people first, which is what any government should do. But Washington saw it differently. They wanted everyone to boycott Russia completely, expecting countries to hurt their own people for American foreign policy goals. India said no. They paid in rupees and rubles, skipped the dollar system, and dealt directly with Moscow. That's innovation. That's independence. And that's a threat to American control. Because if India can buy Russian oil outside the American system and make it work, others can too. And that's the real danger for Washington. It's not about the oil. It's about the example. What India built is a new model, one where smart economics beats political pressure, one where countries put their own people first instead of following someone else's rules. The biggest mistake Washington made wasn't about oil or tariffs or Russia. It was about assumptions. They assumed India would obey, that pressure would work, that India would act like a junior partner in a system run by the West. That assumption, that old-fashioned 20th century thinking, is falling apart in real time. For decades, American foreign policy was built on influence. Soft power, hard power, economic power. Washington got so used to setting the rules that they forgot to check if anyone still wanted to play the game. They thought countries like India would always need their approval, that they'd trade freedom for access, loyalty for investment, obedience for inclusion. But India isn't interested in being managed anymore. This isn't the 1990s. India isn't struggling to find its place. It has one. It earned it. Fifth largest economy in the world, soon to be third. Biggest democracy, nuclear power, space power, tech power. They don't need a seat at someone else's table. They're building their own. And Washington didn't see it coming. They thought tariff threats would scare India away from Russian energy deals. They thought sanctions, pressure, and media attacks would force compliance. But all that did was show how little America understands the new India. India didn't panic. They didn't lash out. They didn't even get emotional. They just kept going, quietly, confidently, precisely. Because this isn't about confrontation, it's about conviction. India's leaders made it clear, national interest comes first, always. And that means deciding who to trade with, who to work with, and how to handle world politics without asking anyone's permission. And here's where the mistake gets even bigger. Washington assumed their influence would last forever, that economic control was permanent. But in a world with multiple power centers, no single country has that kind of leverage. Trade can shift. Partnerships can change. Technology can spread power faster than any government can control it. And India gets that. They're playing the long game. This isn't about emotions or reactions. It's about evolution. When America responds with threats and punishment instead of respect and dialogue, it shows their weakness. It proves they still see power as a pyramid with them on top giving orders. But India doesn't work like that. They don't need to knock America down. They just need to stand up for themselves. And that's exactly what they're doing. India doesn't want to rule the world. That's what makes them different. They just want to be left alone to run themselves, to build, to grow, to innovate on their own terms. And that's a revolutionary idea in a system built on influence, interference, and control. The real proof of power isn't how loud you are, it's how much weight your silence carries. And India's silence lately has been deafening. They don't respond to every criticism, they don't explain every move, they just act and let the results speak. And the results are speaking loud and clear. India is landing spacecraft on the moon. They're building the world's biggest digital system. They're sending out vaccines, software, satellites, and solar panels. They're feeding 1 billion people and educating hundreds of millions. This isn't potential anymore, it's performance. So when people say India is rising, they're already behind. India isn't on the runway, they're already flying. For a long time, the world ran on one big lie, that one country, one money system, one way of thinking could control the entire planet. That lie is dead. We're not moving toward a world with multiple power centers. We're already there. America isn't collapsing. Let's be clear about that. But their monopoly on world influence, that's gone forever. And the sooner world leaders accept this reality, the better prepared they'll be for what comes next. Because what we're seeing right now is a complete rebalancing of world power, not based on ideology, not based on military alliances, but based on ability, sovereignty, and real value. And India isn't just part of that shift. They're leading it. You've got America, still strong, still innovative, but more divided than ever. You've got China, fast and state-controlled, but increasingly distrusted. Then you have India, the world's biggest democracy, young, loud, flexible, and not tied to anyone. His playbook. This is what makes right now so important. We're not just seeing new partnerships, we're seeing the birth of new centers of power, new circles of influence. India's deals with Russia on energy, with America on tech, with the Middle East on trade, with the global South on diplomacy. That's not contradiction. That's a blueprint for how diplomacy works after the one superpower era. Old world powers used to demand loyalty. You're either with us or against us. That kind of black and white thinking doesn't work anymore. Not in a world where energy, data, and innovation are spread out everywhere. Not in a world where AI and quantum computers are going to change everything from war to money to medicine. India understands this. That's why they don't sign up for every Western story. That's why they buy cheap Russian oil if it helps their people. That's why they build 5G at home, send rockets to the moon, and still sit at tables with both Washington and Moscow. Because power in the new world isn't about domination, it's about options. The more choices you have, the more leverage you hold. And India has options. Not just in foreign policy, but in manufacturing, energy, defense, space. They can turn, they can partner, and most importantly, they can say no, which in diplomacy is the ultimate form of strength. The West still sees the world through Cold War glasses, enemies, allies, threats, punishment, but India is looking 20 years ahead, toward self-reliance, toward strategic flexibility, toward digital sovereignty. And that's the future. The multi-power world isn't chaotic, it's more democratic. It's messier, sure, but it gives more countries a real voice. It lets new powers rise without starting wars. It allows cooperation without force. So the question isn't whether the multi-power world is coming, it's already here. And India isn't just adapting to it, they're mastering it. If there's one truth Western powers need to understand right now, it's this. The era of control is over. You can't sanction your way to loyalty anymore. You can't shame nations into obedience. And you definitely can't lecture rising powers while ignoring your own problems. And if the West wants to stay relevant in this equation, it needs to adapt. Start by treating emerging powers as ours as equals, not as junior partners. Stop framing world leadership as a one-way street. Recognize that cooperation can exist without alignment, that friendship doesn't require submission. The world isn't run by one power anymore. It's not even run by two. It's becoming multi-directional, decentralized, distributed, and